Amahle was excited as she got ready for her 10th wedding anniversary. The city of Kwami was alive with lights and music that night. She took her time choosing her dress, doing her makeup, and placing the special necklace around her neck, the same one Bekkazitha gave her on their wedding day. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a promise, a memory, a symbol of everything they had built together. Her heart beat fast as she entered the fancy restaurant where they had planned to celebrate. She searched for him, smiling, ready to surprise him. But what she saw stopped her cold. There he was, sitting at the table, but he wasn't alone. A woman sat beside him. She was slim, loud, and glowing in a red dress that screamed for attention. She laughed like she belonged there. Amahle stood still, her smile gone. Bekkazitha looked up and smirked like nothing was wrong. "Meet Zuri," he said, his voice full of pride. "My real partner now." Amahle blinked. Her hands tightened around her purse. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. That seat was supposed to be hers, a place of love, not betrayal. The necklace around her neck now felt cold. She was not just hurt, she was insulted. He had brought another woman to their anniversary dinner, as if their 10 years meant nothing. People started to stare, but Amahle didn't cry. Something inside her was changing. She stood tall. This moment would not break her, it would awaken her. Amahle stood there for a few moments, but she didn't break. Her heart was heavy, yes. Her fingers trembled slightly, yes. But her face remained calm. People in the restaurant had started to whisper. Some turned their heads to look, pretending to be subtle. Others openly stared. Everyone could feel the tension at that table. A woman shows up for her 10th anniversary dinner, only to find her husband seated with another woman. Amahle knew this was no accident. Bekkazitha wanted to embarrass her. He wanted to show off Zuri, the woman in red, as if she was a trophy. He wanted Amahle to cry, scream, maybe storm out and create a scene. But she gave him none of that. Instead, she walked slowly and gracefully to the table. She looked at Zuri, then at Bekkazitha, and finally took the seat directly across from them. Calmly, she placed her purse on her lap and smiled politely. The waiter came over nervously, unsure what was happening. Amahle looked up and said, in a soft, clear voice, 3 glasses of red wine, please. My guest is on his way. The waiter blinked, nodded, and walked off. For a moment, there was silence at the table. Bekkazitha stared at her, confused. Zuri shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the reaction they were expecting. They wanted a breakdown. Instead, they got elegance. Amahle didn't speak much. She just smiled, sat tall, and sipped water while waiting. Her eyes didn't cry, but they spoke. They told a story of a woman who had been hurt deeply but refused to fall apart. Her grace made everyone in the restaurant lean in closer. What would she do next? Who was the guest she mentioned? Bekkazitha began to fidget. He was no longer in control of the moment. The spotlight he created was now shining on Amahle, and it made her glow. Zuri tried to laugh again, but her voice cracked. She glanced at Bekkazitha, waiting for him to say something. But he couldn't. He was watching Amahle too closely now, sensing that she wasn't as broken as he hoped. She was planning something, and that scared him more than any scream ever could. Minutes passed, but Amahle didn't rush. She wasn't going to run out of that restaurant like a woman defeated. No. She stayed because she had nothing to be ashamed of. She wasn't the liar. She wasn't the cheat. She was the wife, the one who had given 10 years, loyalty, love, and trust. And even when her heart had been crushed, she chose class. She chose silence. And then, she chose wine. The glasses arrived. 3 of them, just as she asked. She picked up hers, swirled it gently, then looked up at Bekkazitha with the same soft smile. To truth, she said quietly, lifting her glass. Bekazitha didn't lift his. Zuri looked lost. And Amahle? She was just getting started. The restaurant buzzed softly with music and conversation, but at Amahle's table, the silence was loud. Bekazitha kept stealing glances at her, trying to read her face. Zuri twirled a spoon in her dessert, suddenly less loud than before. Amahle, however, sat calmly, sipping her wine. She smiled from time to time, not because she was happy, but because she knew something they didn't. Something that was about to change everything. Just then, the waiter appeared with dessert, small slices of cake topped with strawberries and chocolate drizzle. As he placed the plates down, the door to the restaurant opened. A tall, sharply dressed man stepped inside, his presence so smooth and confident that heads turned. He wore a clean navy suit, shiny black shoes, and a wristwatch that caught the light as he walked. But he wasn't looking around, he walked straight toward Amahle's table. Amahle didn't even look surprised. She stood up as he approached, and without hesitation, the man leaned in and gently kissed her on the cheek. "Sorry I'm late, love," he said with a calm, deep voice. "Traffic in Bear is madness tonight." Zuri dropped her spoon with a sharp clink. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She choked slightly on her wine, coughing into her napkin. Her face turned red, not from her lipstick this time, but from panic. Bekazitha stared at the man, confused, trying to understand what was happening. "Kwami," he whispered, as if saying the name made it real. The man turned slightly, gave him a short nod, then pulled out the chair beside Amahle and sat down with quiet confidence. Zuri's hands were shaking now. She couldn't even meet Kwami's eyes. Bekazitha leaned back slowly, the color draining from his face. His little plan, the public humiliation, the big reveal of Zuri, had just backfired in a way he never saw coming. The woman he thought he could disrespect had just turned the tables, without even raising her voice. Amahle picked up her fork and calmly took a bite of her dessert. "You're just in time for cake," she said to Kwami, as if everything was perfectly normal. Kwami chuckled and nodded, lifting his glass to take a sip of wine. The waiter, now realizing the strange energy at the table, stepped back quickly, pretending not to see anything. Whispers started again across the restaurant. People were watching closely now. It was clear something dramatic had unfolded. And at the center of it, Amahle sat like a queen, unbothered and unbroken. Zuri looked like she wanted to disappear. She had walked in proud, loud, dressed in red, but now, she was silent, shrinking into her seat. Bekazitha tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. All he could do was sit there, caught in the middle of the mess he had created. Amahle didn't need to shout. She didn't need revenge in loud words. Her silence, her calm, and her unexpected guest had done more than enough. And the night wasn't over yet. The restaurant had become completely quiet now. The music still played softly in the background, but no one was listening to it anymore. All eyes were on the table where something unforgettable was happening. The people who had watched Amahle walk in alone were now watching her sit like a queen, calm and glowing, with a smart and handsome man beside her, not her husband, but her unexpected guest. The shock had settled, but the tension still filled the air like heavy perfume. Zuri sat frozen, barely touching her dessert. Bekazitha looked down, his confidence now shattered, his plan ruined. Amahle sat straight, her face soft but firm. She didn't raise her voice, didn't shed a tear. Instead, she leaned forward slightly and looked directly at Bekazitha. "You brought shame to this table," she said slowly, her voice steady and clear. "So you'll pay for it." Then she turned to the waiter, who stood awkwardly nearby, not knowing whether to step away or stay. "One bill or two?" he asked carefully, trying to sound casual. Amahle gave a little smile and replied, "Make it 3. Everyone nearby heard it. Heads turned. Some people gasped. It was the most unexpected response, and somehow, it hit harder than any slap. She continued, Bekazitha can pay for his shame. Kwami and I will pay for our peace. She said it like it was the most natural thing in the world, as if this dinner had always been meant to go this way. Kwami didn't flinch. He simply nodded, taking another sip of wine, comfortable in his role, not as a backup plan, but as a part of Amahle's powerful stand. People in the restaurant whispered louder now. The word spread from table to table. That woman in red. She's married. The husband brought her to the anniversary dinner. And his wife, she turned the whole thing around. You could feel it in the air, the shift of power, the fall of arrogance, the rise of dignity. Amahle didn't gloat. She didn't laugh in their faces. She simply finished her dessert, spoke when needed, and made it clear that this was no ordinary night. It was a night of truth. A night of quiet power. A night where the wife didn't just survive, she won. Bekazitha didn't touch his food again. He sat there, stunned, unable to fix what he had broken. Zuri stared down at the tablecloth, her eyes glossy, her pride melting with every passing second. The woman who had once laughed loudly beside someone else's husband now sat silent and small, knowing the spotlight had turned against her. And Amahle? She stood up slowly, fixing the necklace around her neck, the same one he gave her on their wedding day. But now, it wasn't a reminder of their past. It was a symbol of her strength. She looked around once, not with shame but with pride. This wasn't just about love lost. It was about self-respect gained. She had come for an anniversary dinner. Instead, she delivered a lesson the whole room would never forget. Zuri sat still for as long as she could, her hands shaking slightly under the table. Her once bold red dress now felt too loud, too bright, as if it were shouting her shame to the entire restaurant. The confidence she wore earlier had melted away, replaced by panic. She reached for her purse quietly, hoping to leave before things got worse. But as she stood up, trying to slip away without more eyes on her, Kwami's voice stopped her in her tracks. Not so fast, he said calmly, but with a cold sharpness that froze her mid-step. Slowly, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small USB stick. He placed it on the table, right in front of Zuri. Here are the hotel records, he said, his voice still low but clear enough for the surrounding tables to hear. The messages. The payments. Every transaction. Every lie. My lawyer will contact both of you. Soon. Zuri's face turned pale. Her lips moved like she wanted to say something, maybe explain, maybe beg, but no words came out. Her body lowered back into the chair as if her knees could no longer hold her up. Bekazitha stared at the USB, his mouth hanging slightly open, his pride completely shattered. His plan had not only failed, it had exposed him and his mistress for the world to see, and worse, to prove it all in evidence. Amahle stood up slowly. She looked down at Zuri, who could no longer meet her eyes. Then she leaned in close, so only Zuri could hear her words. You touched what wasn't yours, she whispered, her voice calm but heavy. Now you'll taste what you deserve. Zuri's eyes widened, and she turned quickly to look at Kwami, but he had already picked up his phone, likely texting his lawyer. There was no more room to run. No hiding behind charm, red dresses, or loud laughter. The woman who thought she had won a man now realized she had stepped into a storm she was never ready for. And the man who thought he had control had lost everything. His wife, his pride, his reputation, and now, possibly more. People in the restaurant had stopped pretending not to look. Some were recording on their phones. Others just stared in shock. It was rare to see this kind of public downfall, especially with so much quiet grace from the one who had been wronged. Amahle didn't shout. She didn't throw anything. She didn't curse or cry. She simply watched her dignity return to her piece by piece as the truth unfolded. She stood strong, beautiful, and calm, like a woman who had already decided she was done hurting and was ready to start healing. Kwami stood too, nodding respectfully to Amahle. They walked out together, side by side, not as a couple in love, but as two people who knew how to handle betrayal, not with noise, but with truth, timing, and power. Zuri was left at the table, staring at the USB like it was a ticking bomb. Bekazitha leaned back, defeated, realizing too late that the night he thought would make him feel powerful had instead exposed how weak and careless he really was. Bekazitha rushed out of the restaurant the moment Amahle and Kwami walked away. He called her name once, then again, louder this time, but she didn't turn around. Amahle didn't need to. She had already said all that needed to be said. Her silence now spoke louder than any words ever could. She didn't run. She walked away with grace, while Bekazitha stood there on the sidewalk, breathing heavily, confused and shaken. He thought he had power, but he didn't even have control over his own evening. Back inside, Zuri was still frozen in her seat, eyes wide, staring at the USB on the table like it would explode any second. She didn't follow Bekazitha. She knew what was coming. Kwami had warned her calmly, and when he made a promise, he always followed through. And he did. By the next morning, the story was everywhere. Screenshots of messages. Hotel bookings. Transfer slips. All tied back to Bekazitha and Zuri. It was no longer just private heartbreak, it had become a public scandal. Hashtags with Bekazitha's name started trending on social media. At first, he tried to ignore it. But it got worse every hour. His office phone rang non-stop. Journalists showed up outside his company building. His business partners sent short, cold messages, "We are distancing ourselves from this." One even said, "Your personal shame has made our brand look bad." Within a week, the consequences hit hard. Investors pulled out. Contracts were cancelled. His assistant quit without notice. Meetings were postponed, then quietly removed from the calendar. By Friday, his once busy office felt like a ghost town. The board of directors told him to take some time off. But he knew what that really meant. They were done with him. At home, things were even worse. Zuri wasn't picking his calls. Her phone was off. Word had spread to her family too. They wanted nothing to do with either of them. Amahle, the woman he thought he had broken, had not only stood tall. She had walked away with more dignity than he ever had. She didn't scream. She didn't threaten. She didn't beg. She just let the truth handle everything. And it did. Bekazitha tried to post an apology online, but nobody believed it. The comments were brutal. "You threw away a queen for a scandal. Imagine humiliating your wife and getting destroyed by karma in 48 hours. Next time, think before you invite drama to dinner." It was clear. No one felt sorry for him. He sat alone in his apartment, staring at his phone, watching the chaos unfold. The same hands that once held two women now held nothing but regret. He had lost Zuri. He had lost Amahle. But worse, he had lost the respect of an entire city. He thought he was clever. He thought he was in control. But he didn't expect the woman he tried to embarrass would walk away with her head high and leave him buried under the weight of his own mistakes. His world didn't just fall apart. It crumbled in public, and no one was there to save him. 1 month later, Amahle was no longer the woman who walked into that restaurant heartbroken. She had transformed her pain into purpose. In Lusaka, she opened her first women's lounge, a warm, safe, and beautiful space for women to gather, share stories, support each other, and grow together. It wasn't just a lounge, it was a movement. A place where wives, mothers, sisters, and daughters could be heard, respected, and never silenced again. Word spread quickly. Women from all walks of life came, not just to sip tea or enjoy soft music, but to heal, to connect, and to rise. People were curious about Amahle's strength, how she handled betrayal without losing her grace. An interviewer sat with her one evening, asking, "How did you stay so calm when your world was falling apart?" Amahle smiled gently and replied, "He brought a scandal to dinner. I brought closure." Her words hit like thunder. That short, simple sentence went viral across Africa. Women reposted it with pride. Men read it in silence. Everyone felt the power in her peace. Amahle never spoke badly about Bekazitha. She didn't need to. Her success told the story for her. She didn't fight him with anger. She rose above him with elegance. And now, while he was left picking up pieces of his ruined name, she was building something that would last for generations. She didn't just get revenge. She got her voice, her strength, her purpose, and everything that truly mattered.